In this video, we are going to explore the life cycle assessment, or LCA, of coffee and discuss its carbon footprint. While investigating this topic, it is important to consider that greenhouse gas emissions are a common output that is intertwined with many facets of our lives. When calculating an LCA, it is important to outline the goal and scope of the assessment. This is to avoid including data that are not serving the purpose of contributing to an accurate measurement. After this is clearly outlined, manufactured items are often looked at in steps. For example, material extraction, production, packaging and distribution, use, end of use, and waste treatment or recovery. How does this apply to coffee? From the cups we get from shops to those that we brew ourselves, we rely on harvested coffee beans to facilitate our coffee intake. This calls for a multi-step process, including factors such as the steps of growing, milling, exportation, as well as processing. First is the growing phase. In this phase, fertilizers accounted for the most CO2 emissions. Next is the milling phase, where fossil fuels and electricity accounted for the most CO2 emissions. Something to keep in mind is that not everywhere has the right conditions to grow coffee effectively. Because of this, many beans go through the process of import and export. From here, many tools are utilized to redistribute coffee to other regions of the world. This brings us to the third and by far most drastic CO2 emitter, transportation. Transporting coffee beans by plane has become more common practice. This contributes to a significantly higher carbon footprint than other modes of transportation. The farther a product has to travel, the higher this value becomes. These crops come from many different sources, but the main contributors for production are Brazil and Vietnam, which is what this video focuses on. To facilitate these crops, a good deal of land, water, and energy is required. After being harvested, the beans also need to be processed. According to a 2020 report, 70% of emissions in this step is linked to consumption, followed by grinding, 10%, roasting, 6%, distribution and disposal, 5%, and packaging, 4%. After considering the different aspects of the life cycle of coffee, conventional coffee from Brazil and Vietnam, when shipping to the UK, were reported to have these displayed CO2 emissions. Coffee is becoming more known for having high carbon emissions. There are many things that can be discussed regarding this. Something to think about is that these numbers may be different if we consider certain elements. For example, what if the materials being used are recycled? What if the coffee distributors adopted an approach that used more green energy? And what if companies were able to install more efficient water heaters? Each of these, and more, can be taken into consideration when discussing how the carbon footprint of coffee may be reduced.